Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the powerful elemental lieutenant of Deathwing, Morchok. Now real quick, as this is the first guide in the Dragon Soul series, I'm going to do some quick shilling. If you're looking for a full-featured assignment sheet complete with raid alert integration, positioning assignments, and more, I'll have it up over on my Patreon in the coming week or two that will cover everything your raiders will need to know on a fight-by-fight basis. Super handy for anyone looking to get organized but not do the work. Additionally, for all the guilds looking to loot council this raid, I'll have a loot prio guide that we created based off of sims and the pain points in this raid that should help you effectively place what gear you get early on in the hands of the people that will most need it. All of this will be up on my Patreon soon, so check it out there. Alright, back to Morchok. Now Morchok is on the easier side of bosses in Dragon Soul, but there are a few mechanics that you need to know and handle before you can take him and his reverse spelling twin brother Kokrom down, so let's get into it. First, as far as raid composition goes, you're looking at using 2 tanks and between 6 and 7 healers for prog. The enrage timer of 7 minutes isn't really a factor, so if you're struggling with the stomp mechanic, you could even go up to 4 tanks to handle that, but we'll discuss that in a second. Okay, Morchok is a 2-phase fight. The first, you'll be contending with that aforementioned stomp and some resonating crystals that pop up around the room, and the second, a small intermission where he summons large spikes around him and a bunch of black ooze that you'll need a line of sight behind the spikes to avoid. Alright, let's get into how these abilities work. First in phase 1, about 15 seconds of the fight and every 15 seconds thereafter, Morchok will cast Stomp, dealing 2 million damage split between every target within 25 yards of him. Additionally, Morchok's current target and whoever is standing closest to Morchok's current target when the Stomp lands will take double damage from this ability. As such, you're looking to use a rogue with feint or a DPS class with a damage mitigation cooldown to soak that, as it's likely to one-shot them otherwise. Additionally, it's important that the raid not venture too far from Morchok, as spreading out that damage as much as possible is important to prevent untimely deaths. One last thing about that stop, it leaves a debuff that increases your physical damage taken by 50% for 10 seconds, so you can't take 2 at the same time. Alright, other than that, Morchok will throw out a crystal infused with energy near him that, while active, will target the 7 closest players to it and shoot damage towards them. The further you are from the crystal, the more damage that you'll take. There are 3 levels here: far, medium, and close, signified by the 3 different colored beams of red, yellow, and blue. You're looking to have designated players rush to these crystals to soak it until after 10 seconds of it being up, it will explode, knocking back those nearby and eliminating the crystal until a new one spawns momentarily. Additionally, and this is a normal mode only mechanic, Morchok will place a crush armor debuff on his current target, so if you're doing normal and not dealing with Kokrom, you'll need to tank swap. Speaking of Kokrom, on heroic at 90% HP, Morchok will split into 2 different mobs, each identical in terms of abilities, so you'll need to split your raid in 2 to deal with these enemies. This also means it's imperative that your raid does not soak Stomp from both enemies at the same time, as it will ensure a wipe because the Stomp leaves that debuff that increases physical damage taken for a short time, so if you do take 2 Stomps too quickly, you're sure to die. Alright, so that's phase 1. Phase 2 is a bit of a breather in terms of difficulty, but it's still important to be mindful of. The bosses begin to cast Earth's Vengeance, and the entire raid will get sucked underground briefly and pulled toward Morchok or Kokrom, while the bosses summon a ring of spikes around them. Once complete, the raid re-emerges as the bosses spill out black blood around them, which extends slowly out towards the spikes that they've summoned. The raid is looking to rush out and line of sight behind these spikes until the cast ends, before quickly returning into the boss and continuing to DPS and soak those mechanics. For this, I'd recommend you tell your 2 different teams to run towards each other rather than randomly around the room, as it will help your healers to top off the raid as a whole. And once the boss is finished, the groups can re-separate and continue what they were doing. Oh, and one last thing, at 20%, Morchok and Kokrom become furious, increasing their attack speed and damage by 20%. So you'll be looking to use consistent tank cooldowns here, as well as Bloodlust to push the final bit and take them down. Alright, let's get into a quick walkthrough. On pull, we rush in and the two groups can start to lean in the directions that they're going to be inhabiting for the rest of the fight. In our raid, we have one group pull Morchok up the path toward the instance portal, and the Kokrom group will be taking him down towards the temple. At 90%, the boss splits, and people must quickly get in their correct positions. It's vital that no one is standing in between the two bosses so that they're in range of both stomps. You will die if you do this. Okay, once in position, stomps should be going out and your tank and soakers should start to move as a pair if necessary. Like I mentioned earlier, a rogue with feint is great for this as it's on a 10-second cooldown and will be easily able to soak the ability. But alternatively, a DK with IBF or in some tanky gear could do this as well, a warrior with shield wall and last stand, anything to soak the immense damage. Healers need to work overtime to get the raid back up to full HP before the next stomp, while also contending with the resonating crystals that pop up around the room. You'll want to assign 7 people to soak these. These people are looking to rush to the crystal and change that beam color from red to blue by being close to it before being knocked back and continuing to the next crystal. Each phase should contain about 3 crystals and 3 to 4 stomps. It's helpful for raid damage mitigating cooldowns to start in around the second stomp, as the overlap between crystal and stomp damage can be quite high. So look to use things like Rallying Cry, Powered Barrier, Spirit Link Totem, and whatever else you have to keep the raid up during these windows. Okay, Earth's Vengeance begins. We rush out to the spikes that spawn between Kokrom and Morchok, and the raid tops itself off and then goes back in. If you did your job right, the boss will get furious at 20% and you'll pop Bloodlust, racing to take him down before you're overwhelmed by boss damage and finish up the first fight in Dragon Soul. Congratulations. Alright, let's get into some tank tips. Remember, the stomp is split between everyone within 25 yards of the boss, but you'll have casters and healers rushing around to different crystals that pop up around the room, so you'll need to move the boss closer to them so that they can effectively soak the stomp with you while also soaking their crystal beams. Make sure whoever is soaking stomp with you knows that you're moving, because you don't want some other random DPS being the closest target to you when a stomp goes out, as it will kill them. And remember, at 20%, the boss gains a considerable amount of damage, so roll cooldowns like Shield Wall, Pain Sup, Paladin Sack, what have you, and survive that damage. And for the healers, this is a big raid damage fight, so you'll want to make sure that you have the throughput to get the raid up between stomps. Watch your positioning and soak those crystals with the casters as best you can, but be mindful of the knockback that the crystal can do to you. If you're mid-cast, it could cause a tank death, so make sure they're topped off before it pops. And for the DPS, watch your positioning and make sure that you aren't the closest person to the tank unless you've been assigned to be. The stomp will one-shot you if you're not careful. And save some DPS cooldowns for sub 20%. The boss hurts during this window, and you'll need to take him out quickly or you will be overwhelmed by damage that your tank and healers can't deal with. Alright, well that's it from Morchok. He's not too bad. If you're able to do even some fights in Firelands on Heroic, I definitely recommend you give him a go week 1 on Heroic as well. If you found this guys useful, do me a huge favor and like and subscribe. It helps me a ton growing the channel and I super appreciate it. Alright, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.